Are you like us? Tired of all the politically correct horseshit on podcasts and in the media? Need a podcast that's funny, smart, and gassy? It's not politically correct. It's just correct. This is the Carolina Underground. Throw that middle finger in the air. Raise them up. Because it's time to get loud, proud, and in your face. Generation X. Generation X. The best generation of all time meets the grit of the South. It's about everything and nothing at all. From current events to woolly boogers to movies to politics. Loud, brash, funny, and never, and I do mean never, predictable. The Carolina Underground with Mark and Mike.
Yo, 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 yo! We're back again, coming to you live from the Replica Batcave with my partner in high crimes and misdemeanors, hiding somewhere deep in the depths of the uncharted regions of Sparkleberry.
Wow. That is a heck of a build-up. I didn't realize. I know I'm in the sticks, but I can throw a rock and hit the city.
Well, there's a lot of exciting things happening.
Oh yeah, absolutely. What you want to talk about, boss?
Well, I have seen the new cover of Time magazine.
All right, do tell.
Well, according to a company called Colossal Biosciences, they have unextincted their first animal.
Oh boy, which one was it? Please tell
They
me it's
have,
not a mosquito.
no, but this is some Jurassic Park type shit, let me
Right.
tell you.
Mm-hmm.
They have successfully taken 2 samples from the only 2 known samples of a dire wolf, completely mapped the genome,
All right.
compared that genome to its nearest living relative, which is the gray wolf,
Mm-hmm.
found I think there were 20 differences across the 14 genes.
Mm-hmm.
They spliced the differences in and have successfully birthed 3 dire wolf puppies. 2 of them were born October the 1st. The other one was born 6 weeks later and is a female. The first 2 are males named Romulus and Remus.
Nothing could possibly go wrong with this.
Well, technically, they're not it's technically, well, obviously it's technically not a clone, so to speak,
Mm-mm.
because it's not an exact copy. They've used, the gray wolf,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just kind of amazing that this little company with 170 employees that's worth $10.2 billion have now decided to jump in the arena of playing God. And of course, it's all in the context of conservation and stuff like that. But according to them, they have no desire they're not planning on reintroducing this animal into the wild. But this was the easiest one, I think, if I read the article right, was the easiest step they could to perfect the process, because there was a known living relative of the extinct animal.
Well, what about the woolly mammoth or the mastodon?
That one's next on the list.
Well, yeah, I mean, and we have elephants, which are relatives, living
Yeah,
relatives.
but they're not fuzzy.
Well, they kind of are. They just don't have thick hair. But therein lies the problem. Okay, so we've created this animal.
Yep.
Well, I don't even want to start. I mean, it's
Well,
just.
come to find out, some of the main differences between gray wolves and the dire wolf, other than size, and some gray wolves get to be huge.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they're massive. Are larger sizes, white fur, and of course stronger jaws.
Hmm. Well, and that's the point. I mean, again, what was their food source? Does it still exist? Okay.
Well, it
Uh,
doesn't, and that's why I don't think. That's why I think they were kind of like, from what I saw on their Facebook and their Instagram. I mean, people were roasting them,
yeah.
but it's like they said, look, we're not looking to introduce this into the wild. We're looking for ways that we can perfect the science to help the ecosystems that we have now. And of
Well,
course,
go
what's
ahead.
what's later on down the road to stop them from getting bought out by somebody, and then they go into the direwolf puppy business because it'll be the next designer
Oh
breed
yeah.
like golden doodles and all that garbage.
Well, I would be shocked if somebody does not want a breeding pair of dire wolves somewhere in this world. But, again, it's just so, way back long, long, long years ago. Okay. Now, again, I remember people talking about computers and how computers were the work of the devil
Mm.
because
Well,
UNIVAC.
now I can believe that.
Well, but this again, I'm talking about this was back way long time ago, like back in the late 80s, early 90s. And, they were talking about how UNIVAC, and I don't exactly even remember the story, but something about UNIVAC had had some association with 666. Well, and now that we've built a society with the level of electronics addiction that we have today, I can't say that I laughed at the argument when I was a young lad learning how to write computer code and starting my career in the industry. But
Hmm.
now looking at it and how it's been perverted, I mean, and that's one of the things that I've actually been thinking about. I mean, we have been born in sin ever since Eve ate the apple, according to the book that you and I both have read and ascribed to. And yet we tend to be shocked when folks that are put in positions of power commit evil atrocities. And,
Hmm.
even well-meaning people do things that wind up causing pain and anguish to others. So again, what has one of the things that has been precipitating this is, of course, all the talk about, all of the threat and hyperbole and everything about the tariffs and Doge. Okay. And I mean, again, Elon Musk is nothing but a manager. All he's doing is managing the team that is auditing the government, and the government
Hmm.
is failing miserably. And everybody knows that the government has been stealing from us. Both our federal and state and local governments have all been stealing from us and basically had, a blank check to do whatever the hell they want to do. And then we act like we're shocked that what they want to do is philander and, drug and whatever, and just all of these things that because they are now above the law because they're in a position of authority and power. And I don't know. I don't understand how anybody who is oppressed by our current system of government would want to stand in the way of an audit that is showing the levels of fraud and corruption
Well, they're
that
standing in
they
the
are.
way of it because it's putting light on their fraud and corruption.
Well, that's true too. Yeah. So they're part of the problem, I reckon.
Most likely, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I got a question for you.
I got an answer. I hope it matches.
If you as a criminal
Mm-hmm.
and you do something wrong and you get
It
into a place and you forget to wear your gloves, what are they going to get?
What do you mean? What are they going to get? They're going to get your fingerprints and your DNA, most likely.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
let's just go. That's the fingerprints is what I'm looking for.
Okay.
For a long time now, we've been told and taught that all fingerprints are unique.
Yeah, and that is false. Hmm.
That is correct because AI has just proved that they are not unique.
Well, and the second part of that equation is that the final check on fingerprints and on DNA is a pair of human eyes, and the human has to make that determination. Now, it's interesting to me that to see what would happen with AI now. But
Hmm.
again, that's why one of the reasons that 40% of more than 40% of DNA tests, paternity tests, give an incorrect result. And that's another thing that it's like for a long time we were told the lie detector was infallible, and it's pure nonsense. I mean, if you get sufficiently nervous, you'll flag that thing with positives all day long and negatives all day
Hmm.
long. And if you're able to keep yourself calm enough, then you can, blow a lie detector completely away. And of course, we're also told that that ESP and psychic power or psychic abilities are nonsense and poppycock. But the CIA had a significant amount of success with the program that Stanford Research did on remote viewing, and they were astoundingly
Hmm.
accurate. And additionally, I think the only one of the original team, the guy that was a physicist, and I can't remember his name right now, um, was running seminars and teaching you that pretty much anybody is capable of doing remote viewing. Maybe not everybody, but vast majority of the population can learn to do this.
Hmm.
So,
Well, and I think that's true. I think part of our inability at some point and to see things and do things has become with what we have been taught growing up and how we have been systematically trained to focus on what they want us to focus on instead of
mhm.
being able to expand our horizons.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, and
I
we,
mean, hey, there was a lot of things I could do, and I was like Aang the Avatar, and
mhm.
when it was airbending, when I could get up on that LSD baby, I was doing all kind of stuff that they found dangerous, and they wouldn't let me do no more.
Well, I can imagine that you would be that you would be dangerous on LSD. Um, I that just does not surprise me at all. But I mean, again, the point is, and we've talked about this before. There's like 11 families that are that actual 1%, the actual wealthy, the ones that own the planet. Okay, and the the vast majority of those 11 families' names nobody knows. Okay, now there's one or two of them that you'll know, like the Rockefellers are in there, but the vast majority of them you don't know them, and they don't want you to know them, and they don't want the vast majority of the population. We've talked about that whole cosmic game of King of the Hill. They don't want you to be able to knock them off the top of the hill because they enjoy their ownership. But why do they get to own the whole planet? I mean, they shouldn't, in my opinion. Now, I mean, again, I believe anything that was actually earned. If you earn something, you should get to keep it. Which is, again, back in at the founding of the country, you didn't have to ask the government permission to open a business. You weren't taxed on your income, and I mean, there's a bazillion of them. You didn't have to beg permission to go fishing or hunting. Now again, there's a balance here, but in my opinion, the balance is tipped way against common folks having enough freedom to be able to live their lives, without, having a bunch of, uh, well, I don't even know what to call them. It's not obscene, but thieves taking your money from you and taking your livelihood away from you to enrich their own.
Like essentially a lot of vampires, a lot of ticks.
Yep, that's about right. But
I want to ask you a question.
ask me a question.
What's your take on this Carmelo, what's his name in Texas, that stabbed that boy in the heart
He's a murderer.
because the boy asked him to live a tent?
He's a murderer, and he should
Yeah,
be
that's kind
tried
of
as a
what I
murderer.
was thinking.
I mean, again, what's the argument that he's not? So he was in the wrong place. Now, granted,
And then come to find out, he wasn't even supposed to be at the track meet to start with.
right,
He has a prior for bringing a weapon to school.
right,
And from what I have heard, his father said he had a 3.7 GPA, but the article I was reading said that if you added all his GPAs up for his 3 years of high school, they might add to a 3.7.
right. Well, and that's the thing, you know, uh, when I was in school, even, and that, back in the dark ages, there were, now not everybody, some of the athletes actually were able to, they did actually do their own studies, but the vast majority of them had tutors that did 90%, did everything but take the test for them, and sometimes even did that as
Well,
far as
yeah,
I'm
but I
aware.
don't even, from what I'm understanding, this kid wasn't even on the track team.
Well, no, I understand. And again, he was in the wrong place. The fella said, "You're in the wrong place. You need to leave." Now, he may have done that in a disrespectful or boisterous fashion. I was a young man once, and it was not, especially in athletic things, you weren't always kind to the people that were on the opposing teams and whatnot. But that ain't no reason. I mean, there's no reason to stab anybody over that.
No,
So, I
none
mean,
at all.
he's a murderer. And frankly, I'm not a big believer in life in prison. Okay, I'm a little biblical when it comes to murder. I believe in an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. If you commit murder, you're not redeemable in society. Now, of course, there are situations where I forget who first said the joke, but here in the South, he needed killing is considered a valid defense. I mean, there are situations where you know you're cornered like a rat in a trap, and the only
Hmm.
option is to kill, or someone is threatening your life, and the only option to save your own life or the lives of your loved ones is to kill. That's a different story. But just to stab somebody just because he said you're in the wrong place, no matter how it was said, that is not someone that I think can possibly be redeemed by society. But that is something that fascinates me, is, now, I've got family members that uh, really have a hard time staying on the outside of the jail. Okay. And that they just have a tendency to always make the wrong decision, and always, it's usually involving alcohol and drugs that
Hmm.
leads them down the path, and they just can't seem to stay away from it. And so I wonder, is there a genetic component, or to this whole thing? And again, looking at the electronics addiction that is so prevalent today, is there a genetic component to it, or is it behavioral? It's just I just have to wonder about all of that stuff, and I don't think
Well,
behavioral
I
psychology
think
ever came to an answer. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think it is behavioral because it is, any addiction is a learned process. You gradually grow to depend on it. Thus, that's why you're addicted to it. But it can be broken because there are people, I know people that don't even have devices. I have purposely tried to curtail my screen time in
Mhm.
devices, but it works for the mobile stuff. But the problem with that is the convenience of a mobile device, be it an iPad or an iPhone or a tablet or whatever,
Mhm.
is, I have when you purchase a house and you have a finite amount of space.
Mhm.
I'm a book lover. I
Mhm.
have upteen gazillion actual books.
Mhm.
Don't have anywhere to put any more books. So a lot of my screen time is spent like in Kindle or something like that.
Mhm.
And what I have found out though is I go to sleep a lot of times listening to Audible,
Mhm.
and for some reason it, even though the screen's not on, it's counting that. I guess it's counting it as app usage toward screen time.
Well, but I don't necessarily. Okay, so if you're spending your time reading the great works of literature from, Dickens and Orwell and Clark and whomever else, whoever you like to, Thoreau, what have you. If you're
Hmm.
spending your time reading that, I don't consider. What I'm talking about with the addiction is the doom scrolling and every time you get an alert, snatching the thing up to see who it is that's sent you a text message and all of that
Hmm.
silliness. That's what I see, the
Well, now I'm not going to say that I'm reading, particularly not Thoreau or stuff like that. But I mean, I'm reading something that I enjoy. I love murder mysteries,
uh-huh.
right? Be it Anne Cleeves for her Shetland series,
Mhm.
or Vera Stanhope series, all the way to C.S. Harris and the Sebastian St. Cloud series that takes place,
Mhm.
I guess, in Victorian England, where he investigates the murders of the aristocracy
Mhm.
and stuff like that. It's finding out, trying to figure out the murder with the clues given to see if you actually can figure it out. Because sometimes they say they give you enough clues, but sometimes they don't. And I enjoy Agatha Christie. I
Mhm.
really enjoy um, a lot of her books, particularly the Hercule Poirot ones.
Mhm.
The Father Brown mysteries are pretty good. Even simple stuff like Thornton Burgess's The Adventures of Reddy Fox or
Mhm.
something like that. All of those, or we may be tarred and feathered, but I still enjoy the tales of. I went to bed and grew up on the tales of Uncle Remus,
Oh
Brer
boy,
Rabbit and the Tar Baby.
there you go.
And
Yeah.
if that is something that offends somebody because they are too stupid to understand that it is
Well, it's a part of
taking a
history.
snapshot of culture,
Yeah.
a bygone era culture, but it's also just like Aesop's fables. There are lessons to be learned in the tales of the plantation that Joel Chandler Harris recorded.
Well, and that's one of the things I was rather shocked when my children were young, and they had started rewriting Aesop's fables because in the one that stuck in my mind, of course, was the ant and the grasshopper. Okay,
Hmm.
now when I was a kid, the grasshopper died. Okay, the ant
Well, I
didn't
think
bail
that
him out.
changed. Well, I think that changed with the Disney version.
It did, and the point being, but again, the whole point was, and this is, of course, goes back to back again to the Bible. If you don't work, you don't eat. Okay.
Right.
And the grasshopper, and that was a common, again, we live with the industrialization, with the rise of the industrial age. Okay. We went into an era of unmatched prosperity. Okay. And you think about, things like, insurance and whatnot, and the health, the medical, establishment now. Okay. There was no, for the pioneers, there was no getting killed by an Indian or getting eaten by a bear insurance. It just wasn't there. Okay. And the only people that played,
Well, Smith and Wesson.
no, I'm talking about the insurance company type insurance where you paid
Oh,
somebody and they gave, that, people didn't do that. You knew that at the end of the day, you were the only person responsible for taking care of yourself and your loved ones. Okay. And you had to pull your weight, or the whole lot of you was very likely to expire in unpleasant circumstances. And now and the thing is, when you start relying on someone else, some power greater than yourself for your well-being, you have given up your freedom and control of your life. Okay. So if you are relying on the fire department to keep your house from burning down, you're now dependent on whether or not that fire department is funded, whether or not that fire department has water. They have control over that, not you. Am I making my point, or am I going down a rabbit hole and flailing?
well, kind of a little bit of both.
Okay, but you follow what I'm saying. Okay.
Yes.
If everything that you allow, I mean, even somebody picking up your garbage, they're now in control of whether or not garbage builds up in front of your house. They're in control of when it gets picked up. They're in control of where it gets taken, how it's disposed of, and all of that stuff. So, you know, now, and
But
modern,
there is some point of that control that you cede as part of the social contract between being a citizen and having running amok.
well, no, and absolutely. I mean, again, that goes back to Hobbes. Uh, 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 again, any governance, any society, there is a force applicator that has to be able to be brought to bear. Again, in the case like you brought up with this tragedy where this one young man has killed another young man, there has to be a force applicator to maintain order when those unusual circumstances come up. Okay.
Hmm.
And without that force applicator, what do? You just wring your hands. Okay. Or you have to take care of yourself. But the point that I was trying to get to while I was flopping and twitching down that rabbit hole is when you put someone else in a position of control, then you invite their corruption because now they're in a position of control, and not everyone is capable of looking out for anybody but themselves when they're in a position of power, in my rarely humble opinion.
Well, I understand that, but I
Yeah.
also understand that in the society in which we live and function,
Hmm.
there is absolutely positively no way you can be a member of society and maintain control over everything.
Oh no, and I don't disagree at all. I would not have been able to raise my children as a single father if it was not for modern society. Well, I won't say would not have been able, but it would have been exceedingly much more difficult. I mean, again, back in the olden days, and this is not even too terribly long ago. I mean, we're talking like even around the turn of the 20th century.
Hmm.
If if your spouse died, male or female, you were on the market and you were looking for somebody else to pick up that slack as quick as you could find them. I mean, I was
Hmm.
watching. There was I cannot remember the name of the western, or it wasn't necessarily a western, but it was back in it was before automobiles because everybody was still in wagons and whatnot. Um, the mother had died, and they were taking her back to her point of origin
Hmm.
to bury her, which was common. And while the father was there, he proceeded to pick himself up a new bride, marry her, and was on the way home with her. So, I mean, and that, again, and that was, like my grandfather, his, mother passed away during the Spanish flu pandemic.
Hmm. So
And,
did Edward Cullen.
yeah, well, and, my grandfather was sent to live with his aunts who raised him because his father, was, a minister and
Hmm.
couldn't raise him by himself. He didn't have the time. His ministry to his flock took precedence. But at any rate, I think I've digressed as far. But no, I don't disagree, and I'm not saying that society is a bad thing. What my argument is that societies need to have as few rules and regulations as possible while still being able to maintain um,
I agree with that,
society.
but here's the rub.
Hmm.
You've got one side of the coin that thinks like we do, and the other side that doesn't want to make any decisions, that wants everything taken care of.
That's true. Yeah, there are a lot of people out there that are extremely lazy and don't want to
I would
think for
say
themselves.
I don't necessarily say that they're lazy. It's just that that's the mentality and how they're raised.
Well, there's truth to that. Yeah.
That's all they see. It's not that they're lazy because, I mean, it all boils down to the fact that if you grow up in an environment and all you see is the government doling out stuff and taking care of you, and that's what you grow up and that's what you come to think of as what the government's role is,
Oh yeah. No doubt.
then
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with that.
that's a lot of work to change that mentality.
Hmm.
And and truthfully, that's why I have always, you and I, we've kind of circled the bottomless pit. But I honestly, I think the American experience and us working as a country with the political differences, unless something drastically changes,
Hmm.
we're not going to be able to stay together as a country. It's not
Oh
going to
no, I
work.
agree. I agree again, and I think the beginning of the end was the creation of the welfare state. Okay, now it was one
And I
thing.
think I think a sledgehammer blow to the final nail was the 8 years Barack Obama was in the presidency.
Well, that was intentional. Again, there was um, there's been I mean, if you've read Karl Marx, which not everybody has, the true communism cannot occur until the entire planet is communist. Okay. So to be a communist is to be a world domination globalist. Okay. So, and I mean, that's just a fact. If you read the book, it will tell you that it is a fact. Now, communism is one of those things that sounds wonderful on paper, but it does not account for the sinful nature of humanity. Okay. It just doesn't. So the people once the government owns everything, then the government is going to be filled with people that are corrupt. The corruption is going to set in. I mean, we're looking at the levels of corruption that have shown up in our society, over the past, 200 some years. Okay. What are we at? 275, something like that now.
260.
260, somewhere around there. Now, and again, that's one of the things everybody, wringing their hands about the speed at which Trump is doing everything. Well, the man's got 4 years to undo hundreds of years of corruption and that has turned the United States into a massive Ponzi scheme. Okay. And he's probably only got until the midterm elections. So he's got 2 years to get as
Hmm.
much done as he can possibly get done. So yeah, he
Well,
is
because after that, he's going to be a lame duck.
right. And he is absolutely using as big of a hammer as he possibly can. But again, we've had decades and decades and decades of business as usual in Washington and everybody complaining about it, mad about it from either side because it's not serving anybody. This is at least different and we need to let it play out and see how it works. But, of course, everybody's wringing their hands. And I mean, and of course, our industry, the industry we're in, most of the stuff that we use is manufactured in China. So everybody is in an absolute tailspin wondering what kind of effects the tariffs are going to have because we
Well,
know China is going to be the
but
last one to acquiesce or or negotiate. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
but that's fine, and truthfully, I hope they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like with COVID when we had supply chain issues when the canal over there, the ship
Mm-hmm.
got sideways.
Yep.
I would be, I am more than willing to pay more at the store and for products
Mm-hmm.
if they're made in the United States.
Oh no, absolutely. Again, the thing about products made in the United States, and we've talked about this from the textile industry that we're both familiar with, is the laws and regulations on products that were made in the United States. First off, slave labor and child labor aren't allowed, but they're allowed in these countries that we're getting cheap product from.
Like
Okay.
Vietnam,
Yep.
Cambodia,
Yep.
all that garbage, all them third world shitholes.
Right.
Because contrary to popular belief, they third world shitholes.
But whether, popular or unpopular, whatever you want to believe, the
Well,
point of the matter.
and this may be, it's kind of weird. You spend all this money. Let's take the continent of Africa, for example.
All right.
And there are a few exceptions to this, but I'm just speaking generally.
All right.
With Western civilization,
Mm-hmm.
we dump in billions of dollars into countries in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And the rascals still living in huts like they did in Stone Age days.
Yep. There's plenty of them that do. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why keep throwing the money? And it's like the court, and of course, just a few minutes ago, the Supreme Court lifted that activist judge's pause on um, the deportation of the 1793 law.
Mm-hmm.
But who is it from the judiciary to tell that we have to spend money to foreign countries?
Oh yeah. No,
Why do we
yeah,
have to spend money to foreign countries?
we don't. And that's the
Well,
point.
but that's the point.
Yeah.
Which one of these countries are lining up to send us anything?
Then that would be
We
none of
talk
them.
about we talk about these tariffs to Canada. Well, what comes of the hundreds of billions of dollars we send them every year
Mm-hmm.
outside of all this just to keep them floating as a freaking country?
Right.
How many billions of dollars do they owe us because they're under our nuclear shield and
Mm-hmm.
they're not speaking Russian
Yep.
or French
Or
or
German.
something like that or German?
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. And
And
that's
that's the thing that Europe and them, with the exception of the UK, need to realize. If it wasn't for us, none of them would be here.
that's right.
Period.
Mm-hmm. That is correct. 100%. And again, that's no reason for us to be uppity about the whole thing. But
No,
again,
it's not uppity, but I don't. And you and I are of a certain age now, right? We've
last time I
grown up.
checked.
We've seen a lot of the same stuff, and I have asked myself this question for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it our responsibility to make sure all these other countries have this or have that And we talk about NATO not needing to exist. There's no reason for NATO. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But why is it all of these years we're the ones that bear the brunt of the cost? The United Nations, we bear the brunt of the cost.
Hmm.
Why?
Well, yeah.
It does no good.
No.
It's 90% or more of the United Nations support, while they say and on paper claim to help good charities.
Hmm.
All the money is end up funneled to people that are bad people and have bad ideas
Hmm.
of stuff and how the world should run.
Right. Exactly. Again, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. I mean, we're all born in sin, and so when you give people the level of power and control, the vast majority of them are going to succumb to their more base desires because,
I have decided I'm going to write a letter to Donald Trump and tell him to tell UN to pack their shit and get the fuck out. We
well,
need a parking lot where that building's at.
I don't disagree. Again, the idea and the intent for
It
both that.
didn't work with Woodrow Wilson, and it ain't working now. It's
No,
just
you're
like the
correct.
international court.
Hmm.
Don't nobody give a shit what they say because don't nobody care. They have no authority.
Right. There's no force applicator. They can't enforce it. And so again, that's why, so, well, here's something. Well, yeah. So the folks that commit, all of this crime and fraud, stealing and, from, and scamming and all of that stuff, most of them are in foreign countries and there's not a damn thing we can do about them. The ransomware is the biggest one.
Mhm.
Okay. And there's not a
Well,
blessed
most of
thing.
the scam calls they're all
Yeah.
coming from India.
Well, and again, at the end of the day,
Maybe the UK should have kept them instead of letting them go.
oh yeah, well, I mean that's another argument, but that one took me a second to process. I wasn't expecting you to go that direction. You threw me off for a bit. Speaking of the UK, did you hear about the bit where I believe it was a 4-year-old toddler got he got um, oh, what's the word? It just went out of my head. Thrown out of school. You know the word I'm trying to think of, and it will not come. My thesaurus is stuck.
Expelled,
Expelled. Yeah. Well, no, not expelled, but not. He was out for a couple of days, so he was
suspended.
suspended. Golly, Pete, I could not think of
Hey,
that for love
I'm
nor money.
always here to help y'all rednecks. It's okay.
Yeah, my the lazy Susan that is my thesaurus got stuck and it wouldn't turn around. But so he got suspended because and I want to say it was an actor or an actress's kid had decided it was transgender, and this 4-year-old didn't understand the whole pronoun thing and offended the kid and got suspended for a couple of days from school. And then there was another one that came up, and again, this is out of the UK, and a
Well, I'm gonna tell you, I even think Winston Churchill would be ashamed of them now.
oh, I'm sure, but the whole point of of how much of an attack Western society is under. A fellow was praying silently in front of an abortion clinic and has been arrested for
I
it.
saw that one. I
Yeah,
saw that.
and I don't
Well,
recall. I
I
didn't.
read an article, and I think the statistics are there are 30 people a day arrested in the UK for writing things on social media that could offend people.
Well, and again, they've the edict that came down, as I recall from the story about that gentleman that got arrested for praying silently, is that they basically told him you better watch out because if you're praying silently in your own home, you can still be arrested for this stuff if you're within a certain radius of one of these protected sites. Now, if that is
Yeah.
not George Orwell's thought police, I don't know what is.
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I have a feeling. Well, Marie Le Pen.
Mm-hmm.
Miraculously, they tried Donald Trump and her, and putting her in prison so she couldn't run in the next election
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because they knew she was going to win.
Right. Yeah.
The problem is the people are waking up. It's like a great sleep. People have been asleep since the 40s and since the end of World War II.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
And people are starting to wake up and understand that all this stuff that we've been told and fed and all these lies,
Oh, yeah.
everybody was trusting them, but nobody verified.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
the verification is coming.
Hmm.
And if you are so worried that you are protesting that the government is being audited,
Hmm.
then maybe you're part of the problem.
I don't think it's a maybe. I think it's a definitely, personally. And again, this all goes back to the end of the Eisenhower administration, where he said, and I mean, again, and if you look at the stuff that the CIA, I realized when I was watching two movies that I adore. One is Tucker, about the Tucker torpedo, and the other one is The Aviator, about Howard Hughes. And
Mm-hmm.
it dawned on me suddenly that it was the same dadgum senator that targeted Tucker on behalf of the big three automakers, that targeted the Hughes Aviation Corporation and wrecked Howard Hughes' life. Now, I mean, again, Howard Hughes also, he had some pretty severe germophobia and mental issues that
Mm-hmm.
eventually, turned him into a hermit, which is a shame. And I really think, from based on the story, at least from the Aviator, which I'm not sure how accurate that movie is. I'm sure there was some poetic license, but I really think that it was the crash of, I believe it was the XJ-11 spy plane that he was test flying. I think that's really what pushed him into pushed him over the edge. In my opinion, because that was, he barely survived that. I mean, they did not expect him to live through that. But anyway, but again, the government, since there's been a government, has always attracted a certain portion of people that are not above corruption. We'll put it
Mm-hmm.
that way. And unfortunately, the problem is that it is incumbent on the population. We are the check and balance on the entire government. And, this is the second time in my lifetime that the public has attempted to wake up and throw the bums out and create some reform. It'll be interesting to see if this one actually takes and makes some changes that we can all breathe a sigh of relief over.
It's possible. I'm not going to hold my breath on it.
Well, again, he's only got 2 years. If there's a sufficient amount of systemic change, that we get back to the point where, that people start to see just exactly how badly we've been railroaded. And I'm not talking about,
But it's not. But here's the problem. This is what you're going to run into, and we're running up against the clock here on this.
yeah,
You've got 50% of the country that no matter what the government says, they're going to be opposed to it because it's not coming and it's not their huggy, touchy, feely, feel good stuff.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, there's a
So until you solve the problem of the division
mhm.
and get back to a point of discourse, it don't matter what you do,
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
what you say, or anything, because it's not going to work.
Oh yeah, no, I do not disagree. And again, there's that whole problem that reality does not give a damn how you feel. It will be
Neither
reality.
do I.
There you go, boss.
And with that, that's the best way to tell y'all we ain't giving out no fucks today either. Just Just keep in mind, boys and girls, that if me and Mark were dinosaurs, we would be gorgeous-sauruses. And that is the snout to the curly tail, and give me a dire wolf, woo, and we gone.
You have a good night.
All right, you crazy bunch of motherfuck. Wait, can we say mother? Anyway, you've been listening to the Carolina Underground. It isn't politically correct, it's just correct. Our motto is, if you can't go balls deep, don't go at all. Actually, that's not our motto, and I'm sorry, I don't even know what that meant. All right, we gotta go. We hope you enjoyed the show. And if you didn't, we hope it really pissed you off. Follow us on Twitter at Carolina UNDGRND Underground, get it? Or drop us an email at Carolina UNDGRND, get it? At northstate.net. We want to hear from you. Y'all be cool. See you next time on Carolina Underground.